Hi, I'm Francesco Gennari. Today I'll perform Studio No.5, a piece that explores counterpoint across three independent voices, shaped by cross FM and a dialogue between analog and digital timbres. After the performance, I'll share how the patch was built and how each element defined the musical structure. A key element almost always present in my tracks is counterpoint. I like to think about the interaction between independent melodic lines or voices, each with its own autonomous structure. The harmonic element is then created by how these voices meet and develop throughout the track. This dialogue between the different parts is what drives the narrative and the sonic journey of the piece. The voices don't all start at the same time. They emerge gradually, building, revealing, and overlapping with one another. To emphasize this coexistence, I've tried to use different timbres for each voice. This makes each voice recognizable and also creates a broader sonic palette. The patch is built around three different voices. The first one is made with Brenso and Doepfer LPG. The second one is made with the Hertz Donut Mark I and the Optomix. And the last one is made with Falistri SEM VCF. I also used three different effects. A ping-pong delay from the Disting Hicks, a reverb also from the Disting Hicks, an additional reverb used in the final part of the track, created with the Desmodus Versio. The first voice in this patch is controlled by Usta's track 1. CVA controls the pitch of both Brenso oscillators, thanks to the volt per octave integrator. Gate A goes to the Doepfer LPG. I really love the sound of the cross FM on the Brenso, but to get a result that maintained melodic clarity, true 0 FM helps with this, I did some testing and found a couple of useful tricks. The two oscillators are tuned perfectly to each other. The attenuators for the true 0 FM on both oscillators are set halfway, and in this case the amount of cross modulation is controlled by Sapel's green's 2 to the N and yellow N+1 outputs, with the attenuators providing manual control during the performance. I wanted the timbral complexity of this voice to intensify as the track developed. In the first part, I used Brenso timbre section, modulating various parameters with 2 of Sapel fluctuating random voltages and the other 2 to the N output. The final output then goes to the Doepfer LPG gate. By using a second CV input, modulated by the sample and hold from Sapel, I can gradually reveal the full melody of this voice over time. The LPG gate's output then goes to channel number 2 of the QSC mixer. Around the middle of the track, I lowered the level of this voice until it disappears, allowing the second voice to emerge, but I still wanted to keep the melody in a different form. So I created a layer using the saw output from Brenso's green oscillator, which goes to channel number 2 of the Optomix. This is controlled by Usta's gate B, which play a rhythmic sequence, combined with Bagai's minus clock out via the LPG gate strike input. The whole thing goes to channel number 4 of the QSC, where I modulate the pan of this layer with Bagai's sample and hold output. Now let's move on to the second voice. Here I opted for another complex oscillator, but a digital one, the Hertz Donut Mark I from Industrial Music Electronic, formerly known as the Harvestman. As I mentioned before, I wanted a clear timbral contrast, and in this case, it's definitely evident. This voice is controlled by Usta's track 2. I wanted to keep a similar setup to the Brenso, so both oscillators are tuned and receive the same volt per octave signal. The audio output I'm using is the primary's sine output, while the modulator is doing FM with the amount controlled by Sapel green N+1 output. I'm also modulating the timbre in two ways. First, with the waveform discontinuity, a wave shaper that can get very wild. Second, with cross FM, which is much lighter than the one I created with the Brenso. To achieve cross FM with both attenuation and CV control, I used one channel of the 321 and one of the 411. This way I can attenuate the primary oscillator's audio signal with the 321 before it goes into the 411's VCA, which is opened by Bagai's quantized sample and hold in this case, to modulate the modulator's oscillator FM. The audio signal from the primary oscillator's output then goes to channel number 1 of the Optomix. The LPG gate here is opened by a mix of gates from Usta and Sapel's green sample and hold. These two signals are blended and attenuated with the 321. Finally, the Optomix output 1 goes to channel 3 of the QSC mixer. The last voice in this patch is made with the green section of Falistri at audio rate. Its bipolar output goes into the Doepfer SEM filter and then to channel number 1 of the QSC mixer. The sequence is controlled by Usta's track 4 and the filter's cutoff is lightly modulated by Bagai's fluctuating random voltage output. Besides controlling the sequences for each voice, I use the Usta to clock various modules in the patch. Tracks 1 gate B clocks the yellow section of Sapel. Tracks 3 gate A clocks the green section of Sapel, and the track 4's gate A clocks Bagai. I then took advantage of Sapel's clock output to use flip-flop to get a divided by 2 clock, which then clocks the sample and hold section of Bagai, and sync the Disting EX ping-pong delay. There are 3 effects in this patch. I use the Disting EX for 2 of them. The left section acts as a ping-pong delay. It receives the signal from the QSC yellow aux and sends the output to the Optomix. The right section is a mono-to-stereo reverb. It receives the signal from the QSC green aux and also sends the output to the Optomix. In addition to these 2 effects, which are present throughout the track, there is a third, extra reverb, from the noise engineering Desmodus Versio. I wanted something with a long tail to expand the sonic space and emphasize the transition that happened in the final part of the track. However, I ran into a problem. I didn't have any more mute buttons available. Here's how I solved it. I used a VCA from the 411. The input signal comes from the Desmodus, while the CV comes from Usta's track 4, gate B. As I've done in other patches, I programmed a sequence of continuous gates, which I kept muted for the duration of the track. The moment I unmute it, it opens the VCA, letting this extra reverb be heard. Thanks for watching. If you have any question about the patch or want to dig deeper into the process, drop a comment or come chat on the Frap Tools Discord. See you next time!